There are 10 silent habits that only certain women embody. Habits forged not by instruction, but by emotional maturation, by inner fire, by lived experience. You will never recognize these habits by what these women say. You recognize them by how they move through the world, by what they no longer react to, by what no longer pulls them out of themselves. Carl Jung called this the process of individuation, the slow, often painful becoming of who you truly are beneath masks, roles, and expectations. These habits are not techniques you learn. They are the after effects of a deep inner transformation. And if you look closely, you may already feel some of them pulsing inside you, unnamed but alive. By the end, you understand why these women carry an unmistakable calm, one that others are drawn to without knowing why. Emotionally mature women share a distinct relationship with awakening. It begins with how they meet the day. They do not begin by grabbing their phone. They do not leap immediately into urgency. They do not allow the world to enter before they have entered themselves. They begin in silence, with themselves. Jung distinguished between the ego and the self, the larger psychic center that exists beyond daily function and performance. These women understand, often intuitively, that the first moments of the day are sacred. Imagine waking up and letting the first contact be your own breath, rather than external noise. This is not spirituality as decoration. It is psychological hygiene. The early morning is like a still lake. Nothing is distorted yet. The soul is closest to itself. While others disappear into speed and obligation, these women choose slowness. And that choice is an act of resistance in a world that confuses acceleration with productivity. They know the energy you carry through the day is born in that first quiet moment of presence. It is as if each morning they build an invisible altar, a place where the soul gathers itself before engaging the world. The second habit is equally quiet, yet revolutionary. Emotionally mature women intentionally seek healing contact with silence. Not the silence of escape, not the silence of withdrawal born from fear, but the silence of return. Jung understood the unconscious as fertile ground through which the soul speaks in images, sensations, and symbols. These women have learned how to listen to that language. They know the difference between loneliness and solitude. Loneliness is a wound. Solitude is a choice. When a mature woman retreats, she is not abandoning life. She is tending to her roots like a tree drawing strength underground. In silence, her inner life reorganizes itself. Thoughts settle. Energy returns to its center. Voluntary withdrawal requires courage, the courage to leave behind noise, distraction, and constant stimulation in order to listen to what pulses beneath thought. These women know external noise scatters them, while silence gathers them back. Together, silence for them is not empty. It is full of presence. The third habit is subtle but powerful. These women listen to the language of their bodies, not casually, not superficially, but with the attention of an archaeologist uncovering buried truth. Jung recognized the body as one of the primary channels through which the unconscious communicates. Symptoms are symbols. Pain is a message. Fatigue is information. These women do not override exhaustion with caffeine. They do not ignore tension in their shoulders. They understand that every physical sensation is an open letter from within. When the body asks for rest, they listen. When it asks for movement, they respond. This attentiveness prevents deep fractures before they occur. Imagine treating your body as an old friend who speaks honestly to you every day. Would you dismiss its messages? Emotionally mature women know the body does not lie. It senses what the mind is still denying. The fourth habit brings us into the realm of words, not as tools for performance, but as bridges between consciousness and the unconscious. These women write, not for display, not for validation, but as a ritual of inner clarity. Jung used writing extensively as a means of dialoguing with the psyche. Through writing, the unspoken finds form. Confusion organizes itself. Emotions move from the body into awareness without being acted out. For these women, writing is not productivity. It is containment, a way of holding themselves without collapse. On the page, they meet themselves honestly, without masks. This habit protects them from emotional implosion. What is written does not need to erupt. The fifth habit is restraint, but not suppression. Emotionally mature women do not react immediately. They pause. They allow the emotional wave to pass before choosing action. Jung emphasized the space between impulse and behavior as the birthplace of consciousness. These women live in that space. They do not confuse intensity with truth. They know that not every feeling requires expression. This is not numbness, it is discernment. By refusing immediate reaction, they preserve their energy and protect their relationships. Their calm is not passive, it is deliberate. The sixth habit is selective vulnerability. These women no longer bleed in unsafe rooms. They do not confuse disclosure with intimacy. Jung warned against undifferentiated openness, the sharing of the psyche without containment. Emotionally mature women know who earns access to their inner world. Vulnerability is sacred to them. It is offered, not spilled. This protects their nervous system and deepens their bonds. What is precious is not given everywhere. The seventh habit is an intimate relationship with boundaries, not as walls, but as structure. These women do not explain their limits endlessly. They embody them. Jung saw boundaries as essential to individuation. Without them, the psyche dissolves into others. These women do not need to announce their no. It is felt. Their presence itself communicates where they end and where others begin. This creates respect without confrontation. The eighth habit is an honest relationship with shadow. These women do not pretend to be light. They have faced their envy, their rage, their grief, their fear. Jung taught that what is not made conscious becomes fate. These women refuse that fate. By integrating their shadow, they become less reactive, less defensive, less driven by unconscious compulsion. Their humility is grounded, their strength is quiet. The ninth habit is their relationship with time. They are no longer rushed by it. They understand seasons, inner seasons, emotional cycles. Jung believed psychic growth could not be forced. These women allow processes to unfold. They no longer panic when something takes time. Patience becomes a form of wisdom. The 10th habit ties them all together. These women are no longer trying to become someone. They are allowing themselves to be. This is the final stage of individuation. Not striving, but inhabiting. Their calm is not cultivated. It is earned. It comes from having stopped abandoning themselves. And that is why others feel it. Not because these women try to be centered, but because they are no longer split. This calm is not decorative. It is the result of inner alignment. And once it exists, it cannot be faked. They do not write for others. They write for themselves, for the soul. Carl Jung encouraged active imagination and automatic writing as ways of entering the deeper layers of the psyche. And when these women write, something subtle yet powerful occurs. What was vague becomes visible. What was overwhelming becomes contained. Shadows lose their grip. Fears shrink as they are named. The page becomes a mirror, and the words become an inheritance of emotional truth. They are not writing to be understood. They are writing in order to understand themselves. In the movement of the hand across the paper, clarity emerges. Writing becomes a form of inner alchemy. The lead of confusion is slowly transmuted into the gold of insight. Every sentence placed on the page is another step toward wholeness. These women have learned that language is not only a means of communication, it is also a means of healing. What is written no longer needs to be carried unconsciously. The fifth habit reveals itself in the way they consciously choose what they allow their senses to absorb. Jung warned about the power of archetypes and how deeply they are shaped by what we see, hear, and feel on a daily basis. These women understand that the psyche is constantly being formed by sensory input. They do not avoid the world, but they choose it deliberately. They are careful with words, images, sounds, and conversations. They know the soul is permeable like a sponge. Loud music, aggressive imagery, constant negativity, chaotic environments all leave traces. These women have learned to become guardians of their own vibration. They can feel how certain sounds soothe the soul while others wound it. Their sensitivity is not weakness. It is cultivated discernment. They know what nourishes and what poisons, and they choose to feed their inner world only with what allows it to bloom. The sixth habit is revealed in their presence, a presence that speaks without words. Jung observed that those who have integrated their shadow no longer feel compelled to prove themselves. Their silence is not empty. It is full of meaning, full of coherence, full of listening. These women do not interrupt. They do not compete for attention. They do not dominate conversations. Their presence itself communicates. Their energy is organized without force. Their bodies speak without demanding. They have mastered the language of silent authority, a language that only those who are inwardly awake can truly recognize. Within their silence lives a depth that draws others like a magnet. They do not need to be loud to be felt. They do not need to push to be heard. Their presence alone becomes a gift to any space they enter. This quality is not learned through performance. It is the result of inner reconciliation, of a peace that comes from no longer being divided against oneself. The seventh habit appears in the way they protect their energy each day. This is not hypersensitivity. It is energetic clarity. Jung spoke of the persona as the mask that drains the soul when worn too long. These women know when to remove their masks, especially at home, especially in solitude. They recognize when their energetic field has been penetrated by others' emotions, expectations, or chaos, and they cleanse it without guilt. Water, music, scent, ritual. These gestures may appear symbolic, but their effect is real. They understand that caring for their energy daily is a form of loyalty to the soul. Imagine yourself as a temple that must be cleaned regularly. These women live this truth. They are guardians of their own sacred space. They do not allow everyone entry, and they do not carry what does not belong to them. This boundary is not coldness. It is self-respect. The eighth habit reveals itself in their relationship with change. Emotional maturity is not stagnation. It is conscious adaptation. Jung described individuation as a process of continual transformation. These women are not afraid of new beginnings because they have already died symbolically many times. They understand that identity is not fixed. It is lived. They allow themselves to outgrow versions of who they once were without shame. They do not cling to outdated identities for the sake of consistency. Reinvention does not frighten them. It feels natural. They trust the rhythm of inner evolution. They move forward without spectacle, without urgency, without needing witnesses. Change is not a crisis for them. It is a language they speak fluently. The ninth habit lives in their relationship with truth. These women do not lie to themselves to maintain comfort. Jung taught that neurosis often arises from the refusal to face inner truth. These women choose honesty over illusion, even when it costs them, especially when it costs them. They would rather endure temporary discomfort than live in long-term self-deception. This does not make them harsh. It makes them free. They are gentle, but they are not false. Their integrity is not loud. It is steady, and that steadiness becomes an anchor. The 10th habit is the quietest of all, yet the most powerful. These women no longer abandon themselves in small moments, in subtle choices, in daily decisions. They do not leave themselves behind to preserve harmony. They do not silence their intuition to be accepted. Jung spoke of the self as the inviolable core of the psyche. These women protect that core fiercely, without aggression. They understand that peace purchased at the cost of self-betrayal is not peace. It is erosion. They choose temporary tension over permanent disconnection. They choose truth over approval, not because they enjoy conflict, but because they love reality. What emerges from these habits is not perfection. It is coherence. Their lives become quieter, their circles smaller, their presence deeper. They may sit alone more often, and this solitude is no longer punishment, it is sanctuary. They have learned it is better to be alone than to be diminished, better to be silent than to drown in noise that suffocates the soul. This chosen solitude is not escape. It is presence. It is the space where the soul breathes, expands, and simply exists. And from this space, something unexpected happens. When they stop bending to fit others, they encounter those who no longer require bending. When they stop carrying projections, they meet souls who can stand on their own. Relationships shift from performance to presence, from survival to truth. Quantity loses meaning, depth becomes everything. This path is not painless. Maturity costs illusions. It costs roles. It costs the version of self that was loved for being convenient. But what it gives cannot be measured. It returns a woman to herself. It restores dignity. It offers a life lived from truth rather than adaptation. These habits are not loud, they are not visible at first glance, but they shape a woman into someone unmistakable, someone grounded, someone calm, someone whole, and that is why others feel it, even if they cannot name it. They have left their former selves behind, not in denial, not with bitterness, but with understanding. Every pain they endured became raw material for something new. Nothing was wasted, nothing was meaningless. Every fracture, every disappointment, every loss was absorbed and transformed. They understand that mature femininity is not static. Like the moon, it changes without losing its essence. This capacity to transform is not instability. It is vitality. It is life moving through form. You recognize these women because they do not cling to the past. They honor what was real, but they are not imprisoned by it. They do not romanticize suffering, nor do they deny it. They carry memory without being trapped in it. Their identity is not rigid. It flows like water, adapting to new landscapes without losing its nature. They are never lost in change because they are rooted in themselves. The ninth habit reveals itself in how they set boundaries. With dignity, with clarity, without drama. Their no is not a reaction. It is protection of the sacred. Jung warned that what remains unconscious in the collective will attempt to invade those who have not defined their limits. These women no longer participate in that dynamic. They do not shout. They do not explain. They do not defend. They decide, calmly, clearly. Where respect is absent, they do not remain. They leave, unwounded, unmarked, intact. They understand something profound. A calm no is more powerful than the loudest yes. You can feel it when someone crosses a line without aggression. These women have mastered that art. Their boundaries are not walls, they are doors, and they alone decide who enters and who remains outside. Their decisions do not come from fear. They come from clarity, from alignment, from self-knowledge. There is no hesitation in them because they are not negotiating with their worth. The 10th habit, and perhaps the most essential of all, is their trust in the rhythm of the soul. They understand that the soul does not operate on deadlines, that truth does not obey urgency. Jung observed that real transformation requires incubation in the unconscious. These women do not force growth. They do not demand that flowers bloom before their season. When the world is screaming for immediate answers, they remain still. This trust is not passive. It is active faith in the natural intelligence of life. They have learned through experience that pain ripens into wisdom when given time. That meaning cannot be rushed. That patience is not weakness, but devotion to the deeper order of things. They do not chase their dreams. They prepare to receive them. They do not hunt love. They become a place where love can arrive. They do not fight time. They dance with it. This serenity is not indifference. It is the result of deep wisdom. They know that everything has its season. They know when to act and when to wait. And they do not panic when nothing seems to move because they trust what is happening beneath the surface. Perhaps you recognize yourself in some of these silent habits. Perhaps you feel them stirring inside you, quietly awakening. Emotional maturity in a woman is not measured by age, but by the depth of her relationship with herself. She does not seek admiration. She seeks truth. And as she matures emotionally, she does not only change herself, she alters the energetic field around her. Her life becomes a living space that heals without effort, even in silence. Jung believed that the destiny of a woman is to become a symbol, and this happens not through grand gestures, but through daily choices, through self-respect, through listening inwardly, through deciding for herself. This transformation is not sudden. It is the result of countless small decisions, quiet acts of self-loyalty, gentle returns to oneself. Each of these 10 habits is a foundation stone in a larger process, becoming whole, what Jung called individuation. But there are deeper layers still. If you observe these habits closely, you will see that they are not isolated. They support and strengthen one another. They interweave like threads in an invisible tapestry. The woman who begins her day in silence is the same woman who cleanses her energy at night. The woman who listens to her body is the same woman who sets boundaries with dignity. The woman who trusts time is the same woman who does not abandon herself under pressure. It is as if an inner mandala unfolds, a sacred pattern that permeates every area of her life. Nothing is separate anymore. Nothing is fragmented. Her choices align across levels, body, psyche, soul. She is no longer divided. She is no longer split between who she is and who she pretends to be. She lives from a center that does not collapse. This is not perfection. It is coherence, and coherence is what makes her presence unmistakable. Not loud, not demanding, but deeply felt. She becomes someone who does not need to convince, explain, or prove. Her way of being speaks for itself. Her calm carries weight. Her silence has authority. Her boundaries are clear without being harsh. Her softness is not weakness. Her strength is not aggression. She is alive, she is awake, she is whole. And that is why others feel something around her they cannot name. Because what they are sensing is not confidence, not charisma, not control. They are sensing alignment, a woman who has returned to herself and stays there. Jung used the mandala as a symbol of the psyche's wholeness. These women do not merely contemplate that symbol from a distance, they live it. Each habit is a segment of an inner circle, a living pattern of completeness that slowly forms from the inside out. The power of these habits does not lie in perfection, discipline, or performance. It lies in consistency, emotional consistency, inner coherence. A mature woman does not practice these habits because she should. She practices them because they have become who she is. She does not write because it is recommended. Writing has become a natural extension of her inner voice. Words move through her the way breath moves through lungs. She does not retreat into silence because she dislikes people. Silence has become her home. What once required effort now happens effortlessly. What once felt unnatural has become instinctive. What once demanded conscious discipline has turned into an unconscious rhythm. She no longer thinks about these habits. They flow from her like water from a spring. They are not strategies, they are expressions, but there is a cost to this level of maturity, and it is often ignored. Jung spoke of the loneliness of individuation. The more a woman becomes herself, the less she fits into the collective mold. Authenticity carries a price. These women are often misunderstood. Sometimes they are quietly feared. Their calm is mistaken for arrogance. Their boundaries are labeled coldness. Their depth is interpreted as emotional distance. The world is not always ready for a woman who cannot be bent, who cannot be manipulated, who does not beg for recognition or dilute herself to belong. She no longer invests energy in superficial bonds or empty performances, and that can be unsettling to those who depend on noise, validation, and emotional dependency to feel alive. These women learn to live with solitude without becoming bitter. They understand something essential. Real connection is not born from adaptation. It emerges from authenticity. Few people can meet them at their depth, but those who can form bonds of extraordinary quality. These women attract others who have also chosen truth over comfort. It is important to understand that these habits are not rules to be followed. They are not techniques that can be copied and applied mechanically. They are expressions of an inner transformation that has already occurred. You cannot simply imitate them and expect the same results. They must grow organically from within. The path to emotional maturity is always unique. What emerges through silence in one woman may arise through movement in another. What heals one woman through writing may heal another through music, nature, or creative expression. The form is secondary. The essence is always the same, a return to oneself. Jung emphasized that individuation does not occur through imitation, but through self-discovery. These 10 habits are examples, not prescriptions. They point toward a direction, but they are not the path itself. Your path will look different, but it will move in the same direction, inward. As you begin to cultivate these qualities within yourself, you will encounter resistance, not only from the outside, but from within. Parts of you will resist calm, resist boundaries, resist self-care. Jung called these parts the shadow, aspects of the psyche that fear change because they were formed to protect you in earlier stages of life. This resistance is not a sign that you are doing something wrong. It is a sign that you are approaching something important. Emotional maturity does not come from avoiding resistance, but from meeting it with awareness and compassion. Each shadow you integrate makes you more whole. These women understand that healing does not mean becoming flawless. It means becoming whole. They do not eliminate their shadows. They integrate them. They do not erase their wounds. They transform them into wisdom. They do not conquer fear. They learn how to live honestly in its presence. The journey toward emotional maturity is not linear. There are days when these habits flow effortlessly, when presence feels natural and alignment feels strong. And there are days when old patterns resurface, when fatigue returns, when doubt whispers that it would be easier to go back. This does not mean regression. It means depth. Growth often moves in spirals, not straight lines. Each return brings greater awareness. Each challenge reveals a new layer of integration. These women do not shame themselves for difficult days. They understand that gentleness with oneself is part of maturity. They know when to rest, when to withdraw, when to act. They listen, they adjust. They do not force themselves into ideals that contradict their inner truth. And slowly, something profound happens. Their lives begin to organize themselves around authenticity. Relationships shift, some fall away, others deepen. Opportunities align differently. The outer world starts to reflect the inner order that has been established, not because they are controlling life, but because they are no longer resisting who they are. This is the quiet power of emotional maturity. It does not announce itself. It does not seek validation. It radiates through presence, through clarity, through groundedness. A woman who lives this way becomes a living symbol, not because she tries to be one, but because she has stopped pretending. Her life becomes a coherent expression of her inner truth. Her energy settles. Her nervous system softens. Her choices become cleaner. Her yes and no carry weight. This is not a destination. It is an ongoing relationship with oneself, a commitment to inner honesty, a devotion to self-respect, a willingness to grow without abandoning one's essence. And that is why these habits endure, because they are not habits at all. They are the natural movements of a woman who has come home to herself. There are also days that feel heavy, days that resist clarity, days that seem wrapped in fog. These women know those days intimately. They no longer interpret them as failures. They understand that confusion is not the opposite of growth, but part of its rhythm. There are moments of sharp insight and phases of not knowing, and both belong to the same journey. They do not wage war against difficult days. They honor them as necessary pauses in transformation. Jung observed that what we call depression often accompanies a deep restructuring of the psyche. The soul must dismantle before it reorganizes. These women have learned to trust themselves even in the valleys, even when light feels distant. They understand that stillness is sometimes preparation, not stagnation. What makes these women magnetic is not their perfection, but their wholeness. They no longer split themselves into acceptable and unacceptable parts. They no longer hide what feels inconvenient or deny what feels complex. They stand with their light and their shadows without apology. In a world built on masks, roles, and performance, this kind of authenticity is rare. Their presence feels healing, not because they try to heal others, but because they have turned inward and tended to their own wounds. Not in the sense of fixing themselves, but in the sense of becoming complete. They have learned to love themselves not despite their imperfections, but including them. This self-love is not narcissism. It is not selfishness. It is the foundation upon which all other love rests. Jung understood that we can only give what we have. A woman who has not learned to hold herself with compassion cannot truly hold others. A woman who does not respect herself cannot genuinely respect another. These women embody that truth. Their warmth is not performative. Their care is not self-erasing. Their love is grounded. Their charisma is like a soft light, not blinding, not demanding, but quietly encouraging others to discover their own. They do not preach. They do not instruct. They inspire through the way they live, through the way they listen, through the way they move through the world with coherence. Their existence alone becomes evidence that transformation is possible. You might wonder where you stand in all of this. Perhaps you recognize fragments of yourself in these descriptions. Perhaps some of these qualities already live within you, unnamed but present. Perhaps others feel distant, like something you long for but have not yet touched. What matters is not where you are on the path. What matters is your willingness to walk it. Emotional maturity is not a destination to reach. It is a process to inhabit. These women are not perfect. They do not have all the answers. What they have learned is how to live with the questions without betraying themselves. They are no longer afraid of darkness because they have learned that it moves, that it passes, that it carries information. They are no longer afraid of solitude because they have learned how to keep themselves company without abandoning their own needs. The path toward emotional maturity is a path of return. A return to oneself, to one's own truth, to one's own strength. These women have taken that journey, and their lives bear witness to it. They are not living for approval. They are not living for performance. They are living from within. Paradoxically, this is the greatest contribution they offer the world. Jung believed that individuation is not only a personal process, but a collective one. When a woman matures emotionally, she does not heal only herself. She alters the field around her. Her consciousness becomes a quiet source of integration for others, not through effort, but through resonance. She touches without trying. She influences without imposing. These women are silent revolutionaries. They do not change the world through protest or noise, but through presence, through coherence, through courage. They show what is possible when someone chooses truth over adaptation, when someone chooses depth over comfort, when someone dares to become herself. If you have read this far, something in you already recognizes that possibility. Perhaps something long dormant has stirred. These habits are not distant ideals. They are latent potentials that live within every woman. Emotional maturity is not a privilege reserved for a chosen few. It is an inherent capacity of the feminine soul when it is not crushed by trauma, conditioning, or impossible expectations. These women gathered the courage to confront that oppression, both external and internal. They stopped asking for permission to be whole, and in doing so they reclaimed something ancient and powerful, the right to exist fully, the right to feel deeply, the right to live truthfully. It is time to gather that same courage for yourself. Perhaps it is time to begin your own journey, or to deepen the one you are already walking. The women you have sensed in these words are not unreachable ideals. They are living proof of what is possible within you. They are not elevated by perfection, but by devotion to truth. Not by fitting in, but by remembering who they are. The world does not need louder women. It needs emotionally mature women. Women who know their strength without having to prove it. Women who respect their limits without apology. Women who honor their inner wisdom instead of betraying it for approval. The world needs women who no longer live for recognition, but from inner alignment. Women who have stopped negotiating their worth and started living fully. You are being invited into that way of being, not through flawlessness, but through authenticity, not through speed, but through patience with yourself, not through adapting to what is expected, but through discovering what is true. Emotional maturity is not a finish line you cross. It is a living process, a continuous becoming, a slow, sacred dance between self-discovery and self-acceptance. These women understand that life is not about arriving somewhere final. It is about arriving again and again in yourself, about returning to your center even after you lose it, about listening when your inner voice whispers instead of waiting until it screams, about choosing truth in small, quiet moments that no one else sees. Their paths are not perfect, they are real. Their stories are not linear, they curve, spiral, pause and deepen, but they lead home, not to admiration, not to status, not to external validation. They lead to reconciliation with oneself, and within that, reconciliation, a peace emerges that does not depend on circumstances, opinions, or outcomes. This peace is not numbness. It is not withdrawal from life. It is presence without self-betrayal. It is strength without hardness. It is softness without collapse. It is the calm that comes from no longer being at war with who you are. If something in these words resonates with you, if you feel a quiet recognition stirring inside, that is not coincidence. That is memory. A remembering of something you once knew before you learned to shrink, adapt, or silence yourself. These habits, these qualities, are not foreign to you. They are latent, waiting. Your journey toward emotional maturity will not look exactly like anyone else's. And it should not. What matters is not imitation, but integrity. What matters is that you choose to stay with yourself even when it feels uncomfortable, that you stop abandoning your inner truth for external peace, that you learn to stand gently but firmly in who you are becoming. This path does not require isolation, but it does require honesty. It does not demand perfection, but it does ask for courage. The courage to be misunderstood, the courage to disappoint, the courage to choose depth over ease, the courage to grow without needing permission. Emotional maturity is not a luxury. It is a necessity for any woman who truly wants to live rather than merely function. It is the foundation of authentic love, grounded relationships, meaningful creativity, and inner freedom. It is the soil from which a life of dignity grows. You do not walk this path alone, even when it feels solitary. Others are walking alongside you in their own quiet ways. Each woman who chooses to mature emotionally strengthens the collective field. Each woman who refuses to betray herself makes it easier for another to do the same. This is how change happens, not through noise, but through alignment. So walk slowly, walk consciously. Let your journey be imperfect and true. Let your growth be organic and yours. Let your life become an expression of who you are, rather than who you were taught to be. That is the invitation, and it begins, as it always has, within you.